Now, they say that if President Tinubu rolls up his sleeves, the scars will be there to prove that he earned his wet wings in the struggle for the restoration of democracy in Nigeria. But is it enough for his ardent supporters and mouthpieces to speak of him as a committed Democrat and as someone who fought fiercely against military rule and as an architect of the democracy in this country today? Because his opponents say that having become president, he's appearing not to be very democratic at all. Because if he is, they say, why the executive overreach and the legally questionable imposition of emergency rule on Rivers State? Why the continued centralization of power in Abuja? Why aren't we seeing more restructuring and devolution? Why does it look like the National Assembly and the judiciary, which are supposed to be the great bastions of democracy and the people's trust, have both been pocketed by the executive? Why is the national opposition being systematically fractured? Why does the president seem to be knowingly driving this country towards a one-party state? Well, take a listen to the president's response when he addressed a joint session of the National Assembly earlier in the day.
To those who ring the alarm that the APC is intent on a one-party state, I offer you a most personal promise. While your alarm may be as a result of their panic, it rings an error. At no time in the past, nor any instance in the present, and at no future junction, shall I view the notion of one-party state as good for Nigeria. Equally, my dear friends and colleagues, we cannot blame anybody seeking to bail out of a sinking ship, even without a life jacket. Look at my political history. I will be the last person to advocate such a scheme. In year 2003, when the then governing party tried to sweep the nation clean of political opposition through plot and manipulation, I was the last progressive governor standing in my region. The failed effort to create a one-party state placed progressive political party forces on a trajectory to form the APC. It put me on the trajectory which has brought me before you today. I dare not such a favor to any political adversary by repeating the same mistake of political overreach. A one-party state is not in the oven, nor shall it ever be.
President Tinubu there addressing a joint session of the National Assembly earlier today. Well, for more on the president's speech to that joint session of the National Assembly and the importance of Democracy Day, I'm joined now in the studio by the chairman of the Senate Committee on Media and Publicity, Senator Yemi Adaramodu, who is also the spokesperson of the Senate. Thank you very much indeed for coming.
Good evening, and to Nigerians, to fellow Nigerians, good evening, and then happy Democracy Day.
Happy Democracy Day to you. How significant is today for you?
Yes, we know, to not only to me, not only to the National Assembly and to Nigerians. Today is the 26th anniversary of our freedom from the jackboot of innocuous and very involuntary hereditists who took over power without the mandate of the people. So when we see that Nigerians for obtained 26th year being freed and then having democracy, parliamentary democracy, electoral democracy, and then democracy of having to talk, to speak without encumbrance, press freedom, just like we know. Democracy itself is not a brisk destination. It's a journey. And then when you are going on a journey, there will be potholes on the road. There will be cataracts on the road. There will be hold-ups on the road. So definitely, human endeavor, human activities We always be beating that one. That is the only thing that we are having a Nigerian democracy like any other democracy, even American democracy that we call very developed democracy. So for 26 years in the history of Nigeria, Nigeria was not born just 26 years ago, several years back, before us, and Nigeria will continue to live after us, but for the first time, unbroken, because that's why we found out that within maybe about 60 years, we have had about 4 republics. So this is the only republic, the 4th republic, that we will say that had lasted so long. And we hope and we know that we are going to savour it till the rest of eternity, till mortality becomes immortality. So that's why we have to celebrate today that yes, we are very proud that we are alive during the period that yes, the citizens of Nigeria can sit down on their own and determine their own fate democratically through election, by decisions made by themselves, and then freedom to talk even freely to powers. Because we know we might even have some discomfort at times and say that, oh, maybe the government is trying to do this or trying to do that. But can we say that what was happening 27 years ago, 28 years ago, 30 years ago is the same that is happening now? No, not so anymore. And so that's why we have to celebrate, and we have to thank God, and we have to thank Nigerians for being patient and for being very enduring, to have faith in themselves, in making sure that they participate, and they have been participating in ensuring that we have a collective responsibility towards administering ourselves and choosing our own representatives. No more under jackboot, no more under hereditist, no more under innocuous leadership that were not appointed or elected by the people.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people who question, beyond the points that you've made, of the significance of, having a democracy and trying to sustain that democracy, whether or not the people's votes actually count. But that's a different question. But I think you're making a significant point, particularly when viewed in the context of the West African sub-region, where democracy appears to be backsliding.
Oh, well, like I said that democracy is not a brisk destination, it's a journey. But we are talking about Nigerian democracy today, that Nigerian democracy has not backslided, and we don't see it in the horizon, that kind of backslide can.
Yeah, but I'm saying when you see it in the context of the military coups and stuff
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Nigeria today and Nigerians, they have come to realize that yes, when, like they usually say, that democracy that is even wobbly is better than the best of military rule, because in military rule you don't even know the person that is going to administer you. In military rule, you cannot even raise up your hands or your voice. In military rule, you don't have any out of freedom for anything. And in democracy, all those kind of saying that you cannot do this, you cannot do that, you cannot breathe, you cannot sleep, you cannot wake up when you are supposed to wake up. So they are not there. So definitely, Nigerian democracy cannot backslide. But when we look at West African sub-region, and then we look at maybe 1 or 2 nations that had backslided, like I said, they are experiencing what we experienced before, because we have experienced what they are experiencing now before, and then by the time they will now come to realization that definitely what Nigeria is enjoying now, that democracy, that freedom of thoughts, that freedom of action, that freedom of speech, and that freedom of the press, then by the time they now realize, definitely they are going to make sure the agenda and the enduring democracy, the way Nigeria is, is going on right now.
You were at the National Assembly, were you, earlier today when the President delivered his address? Just break that speech down for us briefly. He conferred posthumous honors on the likes of Kudirat Abiola, Shehu Yaradua, Professor Humphrey Nwosu, and he granted a full pardon to the Ogoni 9, which includes Ken Saro-Wiwa. I mean, how significant is all that?
Yes, it's very significant, because we knew the uproar that greeted the hanging of the Ogoni by the junta of under Abacha, everywhere all over the world condemned that action. It was very dastardly. Then definitely, President Tinubu, being an apostle of democracy and one of those crusaders who fought for our new democracy that we are savoring now, definitely there's no way somebody like him will be the president of Nigeria and will not recognize those people who were brutally murdered under the jackboot of the junta. So what happened today? For him to confer honors on those 9 Ogonis, I think had been very, very expected earlier before now. And then that it has come today, yes, everybody clapped, everybody was very happy. Everybody was very happy at that, because for the first time, we are recognizing those people that are even fighting for the freedom and for a leeway and a very good lease of life for the young people. And environmentalists like Ken Saro-Wiwa murdered just like that, and then maybe succeeding governments might not have, maybe it could have been an oversight for them to even bend backwards and say that, oh, let us recognize what these people lived for and what they died for, what they were brutally murdered for. So today, it happened, it came, and then we all welcome it.
Right. So as Nigeria marks 26 years of democracy, as you said, it's passed through turmoil and trauma. What lessons do you think have been learned from the debacle of June 12th, 1993?
Yeah, the lessons that have been learned is that we have to guard our democracy jealously. Because those of us who have lived with military junta rule and then who have lived with democratic rule, we know the difference. So definitely nobody who had already enjoyed who is now enjoying good lease of life, especially freedom, we now would like to go back to where we were then before this democracy that we are now savoring started. So definitely that is a big lesson for us. And then another big lesson for us is that, yes, like I said, that is not a brisk destination, it's a journey. And in that journey, in those journeys, we will now, it's not the same mistake that we had 26 years ago that we are making again anymore. Even when we talk about electoral responsibility, it's not the way elections were held 25 years ago that elections are being held now, because there had been a lot of innovations. Look at the accreditation system. Yeah,
but June 12th is still considered the freest and fairest election. So,
yes,
so elections are not getting better,
because those people that are not that June 12th election then, they were the practitioners, they were the proponents of that new democracy that we started off, that we started with. So definitely that spirit was in them. But because we are facing those people out, that's why we are having more electoral responsibilities from the authorities.
Okay, just very briefly, what about at the National Assembly where you work? Do you feel that you've served the people of this country to whom you owe your jobs?
Oh yes, conscientiously we have served. Conscientiously we have done
well. I would have been astonished if you said you hadn't served.
And then for 2 years that we have been there, the 10th National Assembly. Yes, because, we have 3-pronged roles to carry out as legislators. 1, to make laws. 2, to do oversight. 3, to advocate for our constituencies. And then in all those 3 areas, yes, we have done very well. And like I said, this is a big term. And when we look at the laws that we have made, we have, like in the Senate, we have done more than 844 bills so far. 107 is now for public hearing. 400 is second reading. Then we have some of the laws, some of the bills that we have passed are now laws, 56 of them. And then out of 841 that I've mentioned, only 26 were executive bills. Because at times, some people will just say it's only what the executive is bringing that we are dealing with. 26 out of 844. And we have dealt with petitions and apart from motions. So if within 2 years, that has been attained, then definitely it's a very great milestone. And then when we talk of advocacy with our constituents, then individual legislators, I don't think there's any legislator that is not even getting home dealing with our people. And then, like I usually say, we are the soft target of everybody. We are the most accessible by our constituents because they cannot access the executive the way they will access us. So definitely, we are the ones that we are the first and the last to them. And again, when some people will say, oh, the National Assembly is a rubber stamp this thing, I always ask the question. Even when you want to do a certified true copy of anything, of any document, without the rubber stamp there, it is invalid. Even when the executive and the judiciary does anything, any process, any procedure, any program, if the rubber stamp is not there, it is not authentic. So to that extent, we rubber stamp everything that is good for Nigerians. That is good for Nigerians. Anything that is good for Nigerians.
It's not a literal rubber stamp. I'm sure you know that.
No. Even if it is not a literal rubber stamp.
That's not what people are talking about.
No, you know. Even if it is not a literal rubber stamp, my brother. Even if it is not a literal rubber stamp. Now let me ask a question. If they have brought student loan, and then are we saying that we are not going to? Are we saying that we are not going to stamp it because we don't want some people to say that we are not a fiscus with the executive? The tax reforms that is going to make sure that low income earners and then those people that are just starting their businesses are exempted from taxation. If the executive has brought that and then we have stamped it, are we saying that is a negative rubber stamping?
Right.
Then if we are talking about establishment of universities for our young ones to have placements instead of roaming around the streets, and then we now rubber stamp that one, are we saying it is a negative rubber stamping? So and so on and so forth. So that is, and the flip side of it is that I contested as a senator on the platform of a party. My name and my pictures were not shown on the ballot. It's only my party's logo and the name of my party. And then my party campaigned on the matter of a manifesto, programs that my party will give to Nigerians. Based on that, the electorate voted for my party. Now, if I now get to the National Assembly, so that some people will clap for me and do not call me a rubber stamp assembly, I will now oppose all the programs and projects that we have campaigned to give to the people. No, it's never done.
I see the point you're making.
So,
but
if today in
unfortunately
America,
we're pretty much out of time. But I want, because I mean we're dying to talk to Mr. Abiola about his father and all the rest of it. So, but I want to thank you very much indeed, and please come back and talk to us again. And, and we can talk more about the programs.
I don't know that the time is going to be.
I apologize. We can talk more about what the National Assembly has done.
Yes,
and whether it is in fact a rubber stamp National Assembly. But on that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. Senator Yemi Adaramodu is the chairman of the Senate Committee on Media and Publicity. He's also the spokesperson of the Senate. And happy Democracy Day again.
Thank you, my good.